Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dr. Cammy Goes Keto. I'm here with Mike Collins, a sugar-free man. You can go to sugardetox.com and learn all about Mike and how he has helped tens of thousands of people get off of sugar. And thank you so much, Mike, for being here today. I
My
always love having our talks. But today I have tissue close by. I don't know why. That kind of scares me when I go to grab the tissue first.
living in process, your feet, you're starting to understand when stuff is coming and when you can, process stuff. That's good.
Yeah.
It's not such a mystery and it's not so far pushed down.
Well, that's good news. So I'm today like day 65 or something.
Yay.
I'm day 66 of no sugar, flour, or caffeine, and day 73 of no binging. So that's kind of where I am in my process. So good couple of months of abstinence and starting to feel the emotional stuff come out. So Mike and I were talking before we started recording, and then we decided to just push record because we missed so many good discussions when we have them before we record.
Yep.
And so we're talking about safety, and we were talking about how I don't trust God. And one of the main reason why I don't is because half my kids died in these tragic accidents, 2 kids, 10 years apart. And it's hard and I'm still having anger at God. I'm still angry about that. And I'm still having troubles trusting him. And we were talking about the birth order that I came in from a large family because I was number 5 of 7 kids, and Mike was number 1 of how many? 9? 4. 4. So we were talking about feeling safe, and you were gonna say something, Mike, and we decided to
Well, what I was
record.
going to say is that, when you're number 5 in a birth order, I think that safety in the world, like a real deep core feeling, uh, happens between, birth and probably before birth, but birth and 2 or 3 years old. And I just don't see how it's possible beyond even 2 or 3. I mean, unless they're spaced apart and the mother has a lot of time. I always believe that my blessing, the one real, or there's others, but the one serious blessing that my parents gave, no one can understand it. My father was hard drinking, hard fighting Marine from the Korean. Uh, you know, he was an ass, to be honest with you. He was a tough, mean son of a bitch. And the bottom line was, some reason, when he got back from Korea and he married my mother, he wanted to have a baby right away and thought there was something wrong with my mother in, the first 2 months they were married and she didn't get pregnant. And honestly, I think what happened in the first 2 years of my life, that I was loved so much that the world from both parents, that the world felt safe. And I just, like, I think as a deep core issue, you know what I mean? I was held. My mother said when my brother came along 18 months later, she wasn't sure there was enough love in the world for another baby. And I think it was that base that gave me a safety in the world that is persists to this day, that I don't think even my brothers got, because life got busy, money got problems, things happen. And I just, this is very common in birth order stuff. You see it a lot. A success in the family, or success in life, success in relationships. There's a lot of studies on birth order stuff. And so the reason I'm saying that, and you started to confirm it when your oldest sibling had to become the responsible one, and they do, and I think that's part of it too. But you add that to your number 5, I mean, 4 other young kids, and it's like you don't have that intuitive safety feeling. Like, it's not even accessible in a weird way, I don't think, personally. I don't think it's accessible, like, or even like can correlate it to anything genuinely. It's just not something it's just a feeling that the world is a safe place. If there can be bad stuff, there can be good stuff. You can be, I'm a recovering alcoholic. Things happen to me after that safety time. I think just my father, I don't know, when the abuse started, the physical abuse, and, he didn't change much, and I just started, you know, I was like, "What happened to my safe world?" kinda thing, I guess, when I was little, and, it feels like you may have started out there, you know what I mean? Because it would just be so hard. I mean, I don't know, all the details of your childhood or how much your father was involved or whatever, but that's just kind of my feeling. And you were equating it a little bit to spirituality, you know what I mean? Which I think people head towards to strive for that safe feeling, And I don't know. I just think it's an important, and you notice it a lot about the third child, my family, other families, you start to see the results of, parents just get tired and they don't have that, energy or that giving to that first child or whatever. But so, I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, how do you like you're feeling you're equating not being safe to not being spiritually attuned or not being, you said your friend said you're not trusting God. Tell me what you're feeling with all.
Yeah, okay. So, like, I have never felt safe ever. Like, ever since I can remember, I've always, like, it never made sense to me because I'm somewhere and there's nothing happening bad or terrible. And, I had a couple of experiences in my life that kind of scared me, but like I never had any physical abuse. I had emotional abuse growing up. I never had like physical abuse. There was always food on the table, but I had a mother who talked a lot about how she was stretching the dollar. We ultimately had 7 kids. And then my dad didn't choose to move up the ladder at work because he liked being a salesman because I got to go out and play golf and have 3-hour lunches and drink martinis at lunch. And he
Right.
really enjoyed that life. And so he was not moving up the ladder in a management position to make more money. And that created a lot of stress in the family. And my mom really did learn how to stretch a dollar. I mean, she really did.
But you said she reminded you of it all the time.
She would complain about it. She would talk about it in front of the kids about how there's not she doesn't know if there's enough money. So you were always wondering if there was enough food, going to be food on the table. I mean, there always was, but there was always this question about
Right.
whether or not it was going to be okay, this holding back. And that's how my whole life has been.
Yeah.
There's always like a holding back of me. I hold back and I kind of like almost covet like stuff to try to feel safe. And the one thing that I really know about food and sugar is that when I eat sugar, there's a safety around it because I know exactly how it's going to make me feel. Like when I would do my binges, I knew that I could eat a certain amount of food in a certain amount of time. It would make me feel a certain way. And then I could eat more food and it would make me feel a certain, like it was very dependable. My binges were very dependable. I could gauge it. Like, with alcohol, sometimes you're not sure how much you need to get a certain feeling. And, a little bit makes you feel really good and confident, but then too much makes you be an idiot. And so, but with the food, I always knew exactly what to do and how it was going to make me feel. And so there was a little bit of safety to that. And when I was growing
Wow,
up,
that's an amazing revelation right there. That's like that's a definition of addiction. Even sexual stuff is very similar, repetitive, and able to manage the feeling. You know what I mean? And the alcohol stuff too. I mean, everybody has their alcohol rules. Can't got to eat before you go out, before you drink. You got to, So they all everyone has their own kind of, and it's almost like it takes practice. It's like work. It's like you got to figure your little formula out, right?
right, right. And by the time I got to the end of my binging, I had the formula all figured out.
Yeah.
Like exactly, I would start with fast food or, and then I would go to, cookies and ice cream. And then I would go to chocolate and candy bars. And then I ultimately would end up with pure sweet candy like Runts or Skittles or something that was just pure sugar.
Four course meal. Looks like you got it all dialed in, right?
I did. It was like a 4 course meal.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
And sometimes it was just volume. It was just sheer volume of food that was just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, uh, I mean that's classic addiction stuff. So how you were making an analogy. Tell me what it was for like you felt safe or you were safe because you had this formula. Tell me what that was going to be about.
The food eventually got to a place where it didn't keep me feeling safe anymore. I mean, it just got to where it was so detrimental and so bad for me physically that I had to do something different. But, even through my whole life, I've always felt like no matter what I was doing with my food, even if I was like joining Weight Watchers and losing weight to get ready to have another baby or losing weight. I lost a lot of weight on Weight Watchers in medical school when I was trying to find a mate and all of those things. There was still always this underlying feeling of being unsafe. And I still have it there. So I'm not sure what we were talking about before we were recording that I was going to touch on, but we were also talking about how it's really hard for me to feel safe and it's really hard for me to trust God because because my girlfriend this morning, I was telling her how unsafe I feel. And she said, well, that's because you don't trust God. And then on the way home today from the gym, I heard a song on the radio that reminded me about how sad I was when my first son died. And I really thought that that was the saddest I could possibly get. And then when my second son died, I really realized, oh my God, I can get so much more sad over so much more grief to deal with in my life over the second loss. And then it was really like a setup for me to say, okay, God, I'm never going to trust you again because look, there's good reason for me to never trust you. So that's what's coming into play now is that these feelings are coming up and it's like, oh my God, am I going to really trust you? Because I'm afraid to trust. Probably God or probably other people or a man or whatever.
Yeah. Um this is to me complex and maybe what's the I may be a heretic in some way. Personally, I believe that and I don't want to poo-poo anyone's religious beliefs or belief in God or anything. I just, what we were talking about earlier to me is a more reliable or way of feeling safe. In other words, you grew up not feeling safe. And I think people who have deep religious beliefs outsource it a little bit to their God of choice or whatever. But I think you understand, and you said it very clearly and very perceptively, or maybe unconsciously. You said, I'm starting to feel, meaning 60 days in, you're starting to really get a feeling for the unsafeness that you feel in the world, right? It's like it's starting to come, and this is a lot of what people use everything for, you know what I mean? They're like, they just feel unsafe, and then something proves it to them or some bad thing happens, so they wanna numb it out. So, I think we have to lean more into the feeling of unsafe, and this is one of the only places that I veer away from the actual feeling into the because some of the intellectual work of it is disputing it, right? You have a roof over your head, you have food, you have everything. You're very competent in socially, whatever. So you have to like just same as like a craving presents itself for food, you're like, you can override it, right? And it takes a lot of practice and it takes over and over and over and over. You'll be doing it to the day you die, right? And mine is similar to I say this a lot, this lesson, where when I first got sober 40 years ago, I would speak to myself in a way that was so Corey, 90% of the day, right? And then over the years, it's flipped. And so now it's only 10 or 15% of the day where I catch myself because of the work that I've done over the 40 years to change that self-talk, right? And a lot of it is safety, but more of it was just, whatever, just not talking. And I think the same thing applies here, like the safety, irrational thought that today you're unsafe. And it goes back to what we were talking about with the birth order and stuff. And it's like that internal feeling of lack of safety is going to be really hard to overcome. I mean, it's going to be, but in general, I think this one, I don't know, this would be a toss up, and it's on a spectrum of some sort, but might be easier than whatever your self talk is. And we can get into that right now if you want, or next, or in the next show or something. But, how your self talk is, how you talk to yourself. But that core feeling of safety is something I think you can hopefully quickly feel comfortable with it. I think like with all of these feelings, when they start to come up, is identifying it, or how do you even put a feeling? Where does it feel in your body? Like you're not unsafe in any way, shape, or form, right? And so, but you still feel unsafe. So maybe we trying to plumb or dive into how and why. You know what I mean? How and why are you unsafe? How do you feel unsafe? It's like try and describe it. That would be that's a lesson for all your feelings, because this is a very core one. Can you put a I don't even know what the correct terminology would be. I don't want to be one of those guys says, "Well, where do you feel in your body stuff?" But that might help. You understand what I'm
Yeah.
in like how does
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're asking because I say to you, I feel unsafe. And so when I'm feeling unsafe, what does that mean? Like,
Right.
the body keeps a score, right? And when I do my sugar detox counseling with my clients, I'm like, the body will tell you where it is.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because when I was in pre-med, I got really, really sick one time, like a head cold, and I was over at UCSD. I remember it clearly, and I've never been the same since then. It's in my right side. So anything that always happens to me always happens on my right side. And it's in my right, like inside my ear.
Yeah.
I think I might have a blocked eustachian tube or something because I think I got really sick with this infection. And then when I healed, there was scar tissue in there. And
Mm,
so there's something, I don't, I can't say that whenever I feel unsafe, I get a certain feeling. Like I know that when I feel like I did something wrong, or when there's a surprise in my life, like something happened and I'm like, oh my God, I'm surprised. Or when I feel like I'm stupid or I did something wrong, I get this knife stabbing feeling or like in my sternum, like in the middle of my chest, like
right.
where my solar plexus is. Like that I know, that I feel physically. But when I feel unsafe, I don't know that I feel a certain area, but I know that I have this place right now in my like my ear hurts today, and so it's always behind my ear in my right side of my head, and then there's something going on in my throat, and so I don't know if it's like I just can't swallow the truth, or what's going on, because I actually have an appointment with the GI doctor for dysphagia because I'm having troubles with swallowing. Like I don't know, it almost feels like there's something back there that's like so like a mass or something. Sometimes when I get like the food in the back of my throat, it kind of feels like I'm almost going to choke on it and I can't get get it back up. And so
Yeah,
this all
about that food pathway, but go ahead.
so that reminds me of Louise Hay, right? In her book, You Can Heal Your Life or whatever it's called, where she goes through and tells you like different symptoms in your body, what that means, emotionally. And I
Mm.
don't know what she says about the throat or about having difficulty swallowing. I actually know I have her book and I know where it is and I need to like look at that. But I don't know if that has anything to do with it because it's just kind of so, and the other thing is that it's so chronic and it's so, you know, present all the time that I just don't know if I'm just out of touch with how it makes me feel.
I think that's it. Honestly, it's like you're now coming awake to how these things feel. Full color, Technicolor, and surround sound, Dolby surround sound.
Yeah, I guess I could say that it would be to me, it's a feeling of panic. Like when I
Okay.
feel unsafe, I'm panicky and I have anxiety and I'm thinking, oh my, like something bad's gonna happen, like be ready. And like
Mm.
I went and had a CT scan last year because I had this funky abdominal pain. And being in the medical field, I'm like, oh my God, I have ovarian cancer and early pancreatic cancer. I have this, because my friend who's now almost 8 years out from stage 3 pancreatic cancer, my friend Marty, who I used to live with, I mean, work with, who was totally unsure. Who, he had a vague, small abdominal pain, and they said, "Oh, everything's fine. Take some Tums and go home." And he goes, "No, I want a CT scan of my abdomen and pelvis with and without contrast." And he insisted on it, and they did it, and they found this small little mass in his pancreas that ended up being cancer. And that's one of the reasons why he's alive today, because he insisted on doing that. So I get these ideas in my mind that are like craziness about like, oh my gosh, I'm having this go on, because I see people go, in my life, I've seen that happen to people, and I go investigate it and everything's fine. Everything's okay.
Well, first of all, I think Marty could have been emotionally healthy and kind of understood his body. And that's, I think, amazing. And I think we all are. It's just, I think actually this discussion is revolving around the returning to that perception, you know? And I think the throat thing is like, people are, like, there's a mystery out there why what a sore throat is, for Christ's sakes. Give me a fucking break, right? It's like a sore throat is quit eating. It's like you're eating junk or whatever, right? And you need some autophagy. You need to detox a little bit, right? It's pretty simple. I'm not saying this is happening to you. I'm saying for in general, with all the sore throat medicines and all the whatever, it's a really simple signal from the body, right? And we just override it, because you can override it. And
Hmm.
especially if you're ingesting sugar and flour or stuff, the sore throat will go away for a little bit because you've ingested a drug, right? And so, I mean, I really do feel that this entire discussion is about your return to the Technicolor Dolby sound. Like, everything's gonna be hitting you, and you gotta start sorting it out, because you don't have that little formula that was food to shut it all down, including the anxiety, including the this, you know what I mean? You can't. You can't go back there, so you have to forge this new path of rediscovering your body, rediscovering the feelings, dealing with them in a different way, right?
Well, so that's maybe why I'm feeling so unsafe lately,
Yeah.
because all of this, okay, so that all makes sense now, because all of this is creating a lot of anxiety and panic in me, I think. And I think it's interesting that it takes, a couple of months, of being off the stuff to get there.
Yeah.
But you say to rediscover, or to go back, it's a rediscovering. For me, it's just plain old discovering, because like, if you're I guess when you're, 2, 3, 4 years old, you had it in you and it's gone, and then it goes away. And then, like everybody says, like you recover. No, I am like discovering. I am just like for the first time trying to learn how to be emotionally healthy and deal with all of what the world gives you, the joy and the difficulties and all those things without a drug.
Yep. Exactly. Both
And
physical.
that's a frightening proposition. That's like, how do I do that? How?
Well, you're doing it, first of all. And I love the phrase, the body won't give you more than you can handle. And I believe it, actually. I think it's a great phrase. But you have to be on top of it in a way where you're recognizing it, thinking it through. Um, you can't just like let it happen to you. You have to recognize that, okay, well, this is different. What is this? What's going on here? I'm feeling anxious. There's nothing going on. I'm fine. The heat's on or whatever, the air conditioning's on. I'm fine. Everything's good. But you still feel anxious. So you got to keep delving, keep asking yourself.
Yeah, so I think I'm at the part of me is at the anger stage. Okay, so that statement that you just said, the body doesn't give you more than you can handle.
Right.
When you said that, I was really angry about hearing that, because it's like, well, everybody says God doesn't give you more than you can handle. And here came the loss of my second son. And you know what? I did handle it. I stayed sober. I raised my two boys. I got him done with college, and I told myself that after Michael got done with college, I could let myself go away, like die, because I wouldn't have to be responsible for the kids. And then that happened. So he graduated in February of 2022. And so then I sit around for a few years trying to figure out if I'm going to die or not. And then I decide I want to live and, watch them grow up and enjoy life and all those things. So I'm trying to go through that whole transition while I'm feeling unsafe. It's just, yeah, it's okay. So the emotional stuff's coming up
Yeah. And,
because
and,
I feel
and
like crying.
okay. And you should cry. I mean, I think I don't know if it's an ability. Yeah, I guess it is an ability to not invoke the methods we use to stop. You know what I mean? Obviously you can't use binging, but you may have other ways, shopping or, whatever. There's a lot of different ways to shut down emotions because a lot of times they're considered not appropriate, whatever, and whatever. Like you can't cry at Thanksgiving dinner and you know what I mean? There's a lot of stupid rules around being emotional, especially if it's emotions like you're experiencing now that may need to be excised, cleaned out. You know what I mean? So, and they may be a little dramatic or seem a little dramatic for the time that you're in, right? Like we kept saying, you're safe, everything's fine, but you're still feeling sad or whatever. You have to kind of be okay for now. I think the whole thing is like people think they don't have time to fall apart right now, but they've also learned how to shut it down, like how to stop it. We talked the last time, when I first started into my dark night of the soul and was working on it and everything, I wanted to cry. I had all this experienced leaders and guidance and groups and stuff that were telling me I need to cry. I'm trying to do it right now, and there was this physically, there was this pressure behind my eyes, like when wanted to start, right? But I couldn't make it happen because I had spent 2 decades not doing it, shutting it down. I had figured out physically in a lot of cases, I'd been sober 4 years at that time, 5 years without a drug or anything. I'd figured out whether it was television or sex or relation, whatever. I'd figured out other ways to not feel, but I knew it because I had leaders, and guys that were like masculine as hell crying in front of me in these meetings. And I still couldn't. It still wouldn't come. But I knew that's what wanted to come. It would start, but I couldn't make it come. And I think that's what you got to get used to, or you called it earlier, recover or rediscover, excuse me, these normal, natural feelings and ebbs and flows of life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you're in it right now, 60 days. You're like, it's going to present whether you want it to or not. The courage in all this and the lesson for the audience and the lesson for people in recovery of all kinds is, do you have the courage to let that happen as opposed to find another way to cover it up? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know I have the courage. I mean, there's no doubt I have the courage because when that second son died, I had to have so much courage to go on. I mean, and I was working 60 hours a week as a doctor and a surgeon, and I was single parenting my kids, and then they turned into tweens and they just went like bonkers. And
So you're describing the cover up. It worked. That cover up worked. That workaholism, that worked.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, I had to make money and I had to, get him through college. And now, like, I don't have that excuse anymore. Right. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why God was just like, here, your shoulder doesn't work anymore. Go live off some disability and get yourself, healthy. And so here I am having to deal with that. And so, yeah, I guess it's trying to come out. But I'm so tough. I'm so like, it's going to be a hard one to get it all out, Mike, because like when I was young, I couldn't, I couldn't get my feelings out. It was not acceptable. It was
Right.
not acceptable. And it would be like, shut up and get in the car, and, Or sometimes it was like, "You're lucky you're going," when I didn't wanna go. Like, when my mom shipped me off to Idaho for a year, she was trying to reconcile her marriage, and I did not wanna go. I
Mm.
didn't wanna go. I was 12 years old, and I didn't wanna go, and I was really afraid I was gonna start my period up in, like, Idaho with my aunt and uncle who weren't even there. They took a boat to Hawaii, and so I had these young college kids who I'm still in touch with these now in my life, Bob and Martha, and they watched over me with my 2 cousins watching over me for a year while I was up there. It was awful, and I almost got beat up the first day of school because I wore muslin pants, which all the girls in Southern California wear muslin pants, but they were like this muslin material that you could see your panty line a little bit, and
Mhm.
all the guys were all in an uproar, and all the girls were gonna kick my ass, and, it was awful. But that
And
is where I
you
learned how
were
to
the
spike a
only one in
watermelon.
the family sent there?
What?
You were the only sibling sent there, or
Yeah, yeah. I was shipped off to safety, quote unquote, because I was the golden child. I was the one that was gonna grow up to be a doctor and a surgeon and all that. I came in birth order after Mary, and Mary was a really sick kid and really a handful. And my mom said, "Well, this next kid, I'm gonna make the greatest kid." And so that's what
that's what I
happened.
was gonna ask. How did that happen? How did you become, essentially the firstborn? Because that's the traits they try to push on the firstborn, or like, they try and mold them into their own image or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think in a lot of ways I did become the firstborn, the characteristics of the firstborn,
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
because I was the oldest of the youngest group of kids. It was Lolly, Timmy, Carrie, Mary, and they
Okay.
were the older group of kids.
Okay,
And
okay.
then it was Cammy, Todd, and Marcy, and even we all were, like, 2 years apart. That's how she would separate us, like, she would say, "Oh, the older kids get to go do whatever, and the
Okay.
younger kids have to stay home," and then I was the oldest of the younger kids, so that always made me mad because I didn't get to go and do and be.
Oh, so this is making a lot of sense now. This is making a lot of sense. Okay, I get it. Get it. Alright, cool. Yeah, okay, so that's a lot of responsibility, you know what I mean? I mean, I don't know how
Yeah,
they
it was.
I've never told this story publicly, but my father used to call me Howard for Howard Hughes when I was young. As Trump ascended, he started calling me the Donald, because my father always wanted me to be just rich. He didn't care how I got there, he just wanted me to be rich.
So he wouldn't even call you your own name?
No, not all the time, but occasionally, you know what I mean? And he would, because that was his goal for me, the only goal he had, to model some rich person, right? I mean, I spent 20 years trying to do it, trying to figure it out, what I mean? And finally figured out that's not who I am, you know? That's not what I wanted. So, yeah, I think people do that to you. I mean, the parents, consciously, unconsciously, I don't know how they do it, but it's a lot. It's a lot. Sounds like a lot for you to be taking that on, and to know it to be true. And you said it very succinctly. I was supposed to be this doctor and the surgeon. Like, when did they like put this in your brain, or when do you feel she put this in your brain? How do you feel she put this in? Was it like overt, covert? How?
It was covert, totally, and it was really early. It was really early on because I was desperate for attention in this family. I was so
Of
desperate for love and attention, and
course.
I spent a lot of time in my playpen because in my baby book it says, "Oh, and you spent so much time in your playpen." And then and, uh, and then when I was 1 years old, I couldn't walk because I had spent so much time in my playpen, and then she said in my baby book, "Oh, you couldn't," and she was mad that I couldn't go greet the people at the door because I couldn't walk. And, like when I was 6 months old, or even younger, maybe it might have been 3 or 4 months old, I was really fat. I was too fat, they said, as a baby. So they put me on like watered down skim milk or something because I was too fat as a little baby. So, she had some bumps in the road when I wasn't like doing what she wanted me to be or do. But then when I was really early, as soon as I got into like kindergarten, because we didn't really go to preschool then, and I realized that if I excelled in school, I got some attention because it made my mom look good and it made my mom look
Mhm,
successful,
mm.
then I would get some attention. And so then I just excelled to the max as hard as I could.
I had that too.
for
up to
however
the 8th
many
grade. I
decades.
revolted. Straight A's till the 8th grade till I revolted.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I revolted big time. Well, I mean, I ran into beer too, you know?
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, this is much more fun than studying."
Wow. We have
Yeah,
a lot in common.
yeah, no, it's very serious. I mean, it's true. You go over this thing intellectually, right? And there's a lot of stuff, and I find this in my work a lot. I mean, a lot. Like you have a very intense understanding, grasp. I know you've done a lot of therapy. I know you've done a lot of recovery work in 12 step. You understand your inner child and your history. But right now is likely the first this is guys, listen to this because this is the most important thing you're going to learn in your recovery about sugar addiction or any kind of addiction. So the people come to me and they have this such a deep 20 years of talk therapy and recovery and they know their inner child inside and out. They know why they became stuff. They know the stuff that Cammy and I have been talking about, how they were in their birth order and their family and all this other stuff. But because sugar started so early, sugar, flour, caffeine started so early, we don't have the visceral feeling of it. And where Cammy is right now is in the middle of the visceral feeling of the change process and the recovery process. That's what's happening. That's what's going to happen for whoever knows how long. It could be a year, it could be 6 months. There's going to be an intense part. And it's because you don't have that anymore and aren't willing to go get another one, a shopping or a gambling or a whatever, sexual relationships. And this is the turning point. This is the work. This is a total description of the work that is required to recover from anything, okay? Is to accept that you have outsourced your emotional management systems, your life to a substance or a process. And here we are uh, at 60 years old trying to work this through. And you could hear in 5 different times in this conversation that she has an intellectual understanding of what went on, what goes on, whatever. And now with no sugar, no flour, no caffeine for 60 days and going to 90 days, the actual visceral emotional trap stuff is emerging and it has to be dealt with in a holistic, positive way, a holistic way of, whatever it is, walking, running, there's different ways. And again, the body's not going to give you more than you can handle, but it's scary as shit, correct? I can tell
Yeah.
by your face. It still doesn't make it any easier because you know it or because Mike Collins tells you it. It does not make it any easier. What makes it easier is that people around you, uh, like I said, I had the guides, and the guides were crying, and they're like construction workers and badass dudes, and I'm like, what's going on? Anyway, forget about me. But how are you feeling right now?
Pretty vulnerable, because this is like, I'm going to be out there, but, there's hope.
Right.
It can't be done, and I can do hard things. I know that, but this is going to be a hard one. This is going to be a hard one. And when you were talking about other addictions and things, I'm thinking like I have a pretty good handle on stuff. Like, I'm really motivated, and interested in keeping everything else, up and running in a non-addictive way and, trying to have healthy boundaries and trying to communicate well with other people and what my needs are and, all those things as I'm going through life. But yeah, this is a tough one for me. And, I was gonna say that, my mom's, bless her heart, she's 95 years old and she just turned 95 and her memory is kind of pretty gone. But to this day, I am not loved and accepted by my mother. And that just makes me kind of sad because I did the best I could, and was pretty successful, I think, at a lot of different things in life. And, it still, like, wasn't enough for her.
Yeah, one of the favorite quotes or thoughts I ever heard is one of the intellectual games or processes that we use is to remove the label or the moniker of mother or father from the people. This helped me a lot in the last 20 years of my parents' life, is to just think of them as people, other people, you know? And I'm not a big fan of they did the best they could. I believe it, but I'm not a fan, you know what I mean? It's probably true, granted, and they had their own issues, and they did. I'm sure your mother did too, you know? And that kind of empathy is wonderful, but that's not gonna help right this minute, you know what I mean? It's like, you have to just like, I heard this in one time in a meeting, and thought it was shocking, really, that this woman's father had to die for her to begin her recovery, and that meant that hit home for me in a lot of ways, you know? And it sounds harsh, but it was true for me, you know, with my father. It was true, and I believe it still.
I know. Well, the thing is that I'm working on it now because my mom, her brain is gone. Like she doesn't have a memory, but she has a pacemaker in and that zaps her back and when it needs to. And she has her heart and lungs and kidneys and everything's working. And she could go on like this for another 5 years. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to, I'm not sitting around waiting. I mean, I think I kind of did. I
Mm,
think when my son graduated in 22, for the last 3 years, I'm kind of like, oh, well, maybe mom will pass and it'll make this easier because, I don't have to. But, even now, she can still say things like we were sitting in the circle. It was kind of like one flew over the cuckoo's nest. So we're like five memory patients, clients out there. And
right.
me and my sister and her husband and their dog, this beautiful dog that everybody likes to see. Out of nowhere, there was a lull in the conversation. And she says, oh, look, there's a big person and there's a small person. And she pointed to me as the big person. And then she pointed to the other person next to me as a small person. I think I said this on one of our videos.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So
like
she can still come out with things, and to me, it's kind of like, well, look, the reality is that I'm big still, And so part of me is like, well, yeah, I'm big. And that made me feel good that like, I'm just accepting that, like, yeah, I'm big. But then part of me is like, oh, even if even when I lose my 86 more pounds or whatever, well, she'll find something else that's not good enough.
yeah, yeah. You know, I yeah, I mean, you just have to you gotta accept that's who they are, and they're just a person who, I don't know, there's a lot of things that were left unsaid, left undone. I get it, and that's o oh, what I was gonna ask, that's what I was gonna ask, is, and you feel guilty for thinking, "It's time for them to pass so I can move on." You know what I mean? You feel I did, you feel ashamed, like, "W
Yeah.
want your own parent to die," kinda shit,
Yeah.
but
Especially when their brain isn't working right,
yeah.
and she doesn't really have much of a life.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's complex, this recovery thing. To simplify it, I think we did, hopefully, today, is um that the work has nothing to do with the food or the abstinence. It does. No, I take that back about the abstinence. The abstinence is what gives you the ticket to begin to feel the emotion.
Mhm.
Real work, and this is very, very simple. It's so weird that I can make this analogy, but it's true. So people wonder why 95% of people who lose any amount of weight gain it all back in the first year. They can't understand it. Okay, they've had to both the people and the researchers can't understand that they've had this willpower, whatever you want to call it. They've had a way to lose the weight. Oh, lots of weight sometimes, 50, 100 pounds. But 95 plus, it's probably higher, but 95% of people gain it all back in the first year and then they add some. Well, if you think of it in this context that we're describing right now, where they get to that 60 days or that 90 days and they've lost X amount of weight, and then they get to this phase that you're at where the emotions begin and the process of readjusting to our emotional life without that stuff. That's a very simple explanation for that 95% uh, number. You know what I mean? A very simple one. It's really it's kind of like you can see it after you've helped so many people get there who go on to sustainable long-term weight loss and emotional health. It's now we need to continue this podcast and get the message out, Well, first of all, we need to walk you through it and out of it because just your courage, just your willingness to face this in public, I think it has two benefits, one for the public, but one for you too, because you want to show up as someone who gets through this process. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Man, why'd I put mascara on this morning? I never put it on, and I put it on to have
You look
lashes.
great. You're doing great. This is so exciting to
Thank you.
me. Really. I mean, you just don't know how exciting because
Ugh,
and I love all of the people that have tried detoxes, but it's less than 50% that go, it's less than that even, but anyway, that hit this place and continue to go, continue to move forward. They fall back and they have
yeah.
reasons, whatever they are, but it
All
takes
right.
immense courage and immense support, courage to get support as well. There's not a lot of learning in it. I mean, there's some nuance as we've discussed today, but for the most part, it's just understanding this turning point, this linchpin, this place, and continuing forward and dealing with whatever comes, you know?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for helping me go through this. I really
It's
appreciate everything you're doing.
beats the shit out of getting rich, let me tell you. You don't know really, you don't know the reward, the feeling, the good feeling when another person gets out the other that understands it.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time, and we'll continue to move forward emotionally and see what happens.
Yeah. Thank you, Cammy, Dr.
Thank you. Take care. Bye, everybody.